Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us live. To those who are live with us now, and for those who in the future will be watching this, my name is Angel Mizuko, and I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives here with the Mom Project. We've got quite a bit of thought-provoking discussion to engage in the next hour, but before we jump in, I do want to highlight that since we're streaming live, we do plan to leave a few minutes at the end of this discussion to answer the most popular questions from our audience. So please feel free to drop a line in the chat and say hello and share any questions that you may have around the topics we discuss. I'd love to also hear how you're really doing right now with everything going on. This is a safe and honest space for you to be yourself. Before we dive in, I'm going to share a little bit of background on who we are, who we have on the call, and really how this amazing lineup of panelists has come to fruition. The Mom Project is a leader in helping companies attract and retain female and parent talent. With our community of over 250,000 talented professionals and more than 2,000 companies, we're committed to building a better workplace for parents. And here at the Mom Project, we've been working in real time to really understand how the employee experience is shifting with everyone during COVID-19 and the effects that remote work is having on productivity, well-being, and family. Our research team, Work Labs, is looking at remote experiences with partners and across our community to find ways to ensure the best return in areas of effectiveness, happiness, and retention as we look to the future of work for parents and families. And I'm also honored to share that we have been partnering really closely with another fantastic group in the Bay Area. Today, all of our speakers are part of the Parents in Tech Alliance, a professional network representing thousands of workers across Silicon Valley, driven to increase workplace inclusion. PTA's purpose is to build a more belonging with guiding tech leadership with its proven talent engagement solutions and democratize its collective know-how with inclusion advocacy resources. And together, we're excited to dig into some of the issues that families are facing in the current state of the world. Due to mandated school closures across the world while sheltering in place, many parents are now dealing with the challenges of working through a crisis at home while parenting. And our goal with this roundtable is to design a space for some of tech's top parent leaders from the Parents in Tech Alliance to come together in collaboration with the Mom Project to share what's been working at home, within their organizations, and as we learn to navigate all the changes that are happening around us, how to cope and what that future may look like. With parents experiencing higher levels of stress than ever before, the faster we can adopt to support them, the bigger of an opportunity we have to positively impact our people, their well-being, and the future of work. So with that being said, I'd love to do a quick round of introductions with our speakers, and then we can go ahead and get started. Marilyn, why don't we start with you? Do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, not at all. Thank you, Angel. So hello, everyone. I'm Marilyn Lynn. I am currently a chief of staff for our support organization at Salesforce and also part of, as Angel mentioned, the Tech and Alliance, Parents in Tech Alliance organization. Some history behind my involvement with employee resource groups is I am a co-founder of our Salesforce Women's Network. And through that experience, as I became a mother, and realizing just the challenges of being a working parent, I also put together a employee resource group focused on working parents as well, that we call Parent Force. And I'm really honored to be part of this discussion. It's a very timely topic to be sharing some of the struggle is real. So some of the struggles with all of you, I know I'm not alone here, and definitely not preaching to the choir in terms of what we're all going through right now. So I'm really excited to share some of the things that we've been going through, some best practice tips to share with folks out there as well.
Great, thank you, Marilyn. Good to have you. Allison, why don't you go ahead and go next?
Sure. I'm Allison Crawford. I work at Uber. I've been at Uber for coming up on 4 years now, and I sit on our diversity and inclusion team. I'm our head of partnerships and communities within the organization. I'm supporting our employee resource groups, our external partnerships, executive engagement when it comes to providing a more inclusive workforce. I also founded our Parents ERG 4 years ago. And the Employee Resource Group has been crucial in developing our programs, our benefits to make sure that we're competitive within all industries. So it's a real pleasure to be here. I am also a first responder. I'm an emergency medical technician and worked for the last couple of years on and off over in the East Bay and ambulance. So I've also seen the other side of this pandemic as well.
Wow, thank you for everything you're doing, Allison. That's amazing. We'll go ahead and have Henry introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Henry Lowe, and I lead the Parents ERG at Airbnb, and also am a founding member of the Parents in Tech Alliance. And having kind of been brought in been at Airbnb about 4.5 years. And when I arrived there, I was really seeking a parent group, which there sort of had been one, but at that time, there probably had only been 2 people that had gone through a pregnancy while at being an employee. So from there, now we have hundreds all over the world. We have 13 chapters. And a lot of our focus is really around bringing so much of the awareness and the discussion and how to support people. I think when you have such a big growth of parents in a company, sometimes there are the things that you can do policy-wise, but a lot of it is making sure that we have the structures to build the right amount of empathy so that people really understand how to support parents in the way that serves them for being sustainable employees.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for that, Henry. Sarah, we'll go ahead and shift to you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Joel Hall. I'm also a founding member of the Parents in Tech Alliance group here, and also serve as the Families at Workday ERG leader at our Workday headquarters. I have a 7-year-old daughter. My husband and I here live in the East Bay in Silicon Valley, and have really been championed over the past 7 years since becoming a first-time parent, really trying to advocate companies to add caregivers to their inclusion strategies. That's pretty revolutionary still, and even with trying to democratize our know-how, we know there's still a lot to do to kind of, to Henry's point, raise the level of awareness, inclusion, transparency, especially as we're heading to major shifts in our workforce today. It's great to be here with you all.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And last but not least, we have Matt.
Everybody, I'm Matt. I was a former founder and co-lead of the Parents ERG at Thumbtack, and now I'm focusing on contributing to the Parents in Tech Alliance. So just super excited to be here. I know everybody's socially distant, but we're all in the same boat. So just excited to contribute what I can to helping build community and empathy across the society as we find it today.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And thank you again, all of you who are contributing and have been collaborating. Big place in my heart for the Parents in Tech Alliance. So it means a lot that we can share our knowledge and what's been working and thoughts we have on the future. So we are going to jump right in. And the first question I wanted to start with, and I feel like it's been bouncing around in a lot of conversations, a lot of webinars and other things that we're seeing on LinkedIn as well. But I want to talk just briefly on the structure of everything that's going on. And I know for people that looks completely different depending on who you are. But I wanted to open it up to the group and see if you have anything that you feel is working towards a structure in your home. And if you do, how did you create and sustain that for both your home life and your work schedule and your kids' schedule? Does anyone want to chime in on that to start? I think, Matt, you may have signed up for that initially. Do you have some thoughts to share?
Sure. Yeah, so I reflecting on, I mean, it's been almost 7 weeks that I've been working from home. It was a dream the first 2 weeks before the daycares closed and everyone was at home with me. So in contrast, you know, a lot of the early recommendations were keep everything structured and, you know, segment out the day and your kids will be grateful for it and they'll be angels and everything will be perfect and sunshine and rainbows. And we pretty quickly found that wasn't the case for us in our experience. If it does work for folks, that's awesome. But we really, tried doing a lot of different things. Homeschooling wise, we have a 4-year-old. So she was in preschool daycare, and our son is 2, just turned 2. So we had 2 birthdays in quarantine, and really the only structure that we've stuck to is getting the kids out of the house. Usually in a 2v1 situation, my wife and I both work, so we've been ping-ponging the kids back and forth quite a bit. So a healthy dose of grace and allowing ourselves to just have things not work out when they don't work out, but really sticking to getting the kids out of the house for neighborhood scooter rides and walks in the stroller and things like that, at least twice a day, once in the morning and then once in the afternoon, to kind of decompress and get some energy out.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And I wanted to open with that question because I think there's some levity behind it on like schedule. What is schedule, right? And I've heard so much feedback on that. And what works for you is not going to work for someone else, and vice versa. So it's good to hear that we're all in this together, and schedules are going out the window. I am curious with work and how we're used to working. Is there a set schedule that you are following, or how have hours shift to and what do they look like now? Allison, I know you had some thoughts to share on that.
Yeah, and I think Matt brings up a great point around age, and when it comes to children in the kind of span, and if they're taking naps or not, and if they have homework or if they have lessons. And I think we like to kind of put everything in this bucket of parents that are staying home. But gosh, when I see someone walking around the block with a 2-year-old, and my daughter's almost 7, just to put things in perspective, I'm like, it could be that though. Like, it's like, I could be with a 2-year-old, and I just have just so much love for folks that are at home with babies and toddlers, because I feel like on the other side, my daughter's almost 7. I taught her last night, this is a big thing, how to get me a glass of water at the fridge, and to push it and to get ice and everything. So you can't teach a 2-year-old. You wouldn't want to teach a 2-year-old that. But to answer your question, when it looks day to day, we want to make sure that we're getting ready in the morning as if we are going somewhere. So you have to get up, everyone. This is including my husband. You have to get up. You have to put somewhat of normal clothes on, just something you didn't sleep in. Okay. Everyone's hair somewhat brushed, teeth brushed, fed, and then we can go ahead and get started for the day. But if those things aren't happening, if you're not really getting ready to start, I think children, there's no signal to them that there's any difference. So that's kind of the big piece of our schedule. My daughters, I'm very fortunate and privileged to have my daughter's school send us lessons that I'm delivering. And we're doing those tag teaming on and off until around noon or 1. And then really anything goes between 1 and 4:30. Or anything to keep us safe, but we are spending as much time outside as possible. It's crucial for everyone's, mental health. But I would say that's kind of like our loose schedule. Again, that works for us. I don't expect it to work for everyone else. And I think so much of people that have multiple children, especially, essential workers, where you don't have both, have the ability to work from home, and then also families that have children with special needs as well too, because that's a different situation. So that's kind of my perspective.
Yeah, completely. Thank you for sharing that. And it hit home with me. It struck a chord because I am a parent of a 2-year-old. He turned 2 last week, so we're all in different places. And I'll tell you, last Friday I had probably 12 calls on my calendar that I was juggling, and a baby on my hip because my husband was out of commission for the day. So anything goes, right? I think it's different in every household. And just to touch on, the amounts of screen time or the amounts of sugar, like this is a no judgment zone right now. And we are all just trying to figure this out day by day. So thank you for highlighting the differences and those nuances there. So let's go to our next question. And the next question is, how has your company how have you adjusted to facilitate your work with everything going on COVID related? Are there any particular conditions that you would like to share? I know, Henry, you had some thoughts to share on this.
Yeah, so I'll kind of speak for personally around some of this, and also supporting other parents as well. Our company has had a very flexible policy where we basically said during this time, you want to be able to work with your manager and your teams and be able to just communicate with them what you can and can't do. And actually, I will want to say, give a lot of credit to our leadership who took a lot of feedback and saying, flexible's great. And that's kind of like the vacation policy, the endless vacation policy, where you tell a company you can take as much vacation as you want, and how they found that that didn't actually work. And so in our case, we had to come back and really iterate to families, especially as the weeks have progressed. When we say take that flexibility, I want to put the gauge on you as a parent to do what feels right. Allison, you mentioned mental health. I think that's actually one of the huge issues that is very invisible to what people think, right? If you're not in that situation, and even in that single person's experience, you just can't quite imagine so much of that impact. There's words like trauma and grief that are happening while everybody is working from home. And so
You hit your mute, Henry.
we've been telling people to communicate to their managers and saying, here's what I can do and here's what it looks like for me, and to maintain those discussions on a weekly basis, because every week, if not every day, things change. And the ways that people feel, as well as the way that people can be supported, starts to shift as well. And so it really is this ongoing conversation that parents are having with their teams and managers.
So important. And we're going to get into mental health and some things we can do to advocate for that in a little bit here, but it's so important to highlight. Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to add to that as well?
Yeah, similar. I've been really impressed with our company and our marketing department's leadership of just being transparent and really acknowledging the very specific challenges that caregivers and parents are facing today. Our org is a majority of caregivers who are the primary caregiver in their situation. So just even acknowledging it from day one was very important and powerful. Even little management tips that we're trying to share across teams, like if you're going to schedule a calendar invite, start it 5 minutes or 10 minutes into the hour, try to end it or 5-10 minutes before that hour mark. That's going to let us take a bio break, go check on the kids, do what's needed, because most of us have, I think, already started to experience Zoom fatigue. And I just read a report last night. Zoom shared they've seen a 700% increase in evening weekday calls since February. And that's a big signal that caregivers and parents are having to adjust their schedules and productivity to make it work, because most of us have, more morning hours, I would say, is average, dedicated to figuring out the kids' needs first before we figure out our own daily schedule. So I think the transparency, the acknowledgement, being able to really work with your teams. And I'm super stringent on my calendars, whether it's for personal time, family time, or work time, really trying to give my teams and folks around me to say, this is sacred time. We can always work around it and adjust, but really trying to keep true to that too.
Yeah, most definitely. And making sure that those boundaries are in place. I think with all of us working at home, those lines are starting to become more and more blurred. So having that open communication to say, hey, this is when I am available. This is when we can collaborate as a team. And this is the time that I need for my other team, my coworkers at home. There's a distinction there that's really important. So thank you for sharing, Sarah. And Allison, we had talked a little bit about working as parents at home with kids and best practices that companies can be doing to support their teams right now. I'd love to hear from your perspective what some of those best practices could look like, or things that you've noticed that are working well.
I think we touched on a lot of them around flexibility with calendars and making sure that parents and caregivers are very transparent of what those needs look like. At Uber, we have done, I think, a phenomenal job when it comes to the messaging actually coming from our executive leadership team. It's not so much, director or below or senior managers being like, hey, we support this. It actually comes from Dara and his direct reports saying, managers, every single people leader, it doesn't matter where your team is or what level you are, please be empathetic and understand that parents and caregivers are struggling right now. And we're putting together, we do have a flexible work policy in place for all of our full-time employees globally. That's over 27,000 employees globally. And that is in effect. We're now working on one that's a little bit more updated in response to COVID-19. So more to come on that. But we're being as nimble as possible when it comes to understanding and providing empathy to all of our managers, to all of our employees.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Especially hearing that, you know, the companies holistically are being supportive from leadership down. For how would you say you can advocate or someone can advocate for themselves to get support from a company that may not be there yet? Marilyn, would you mind chiming in on this one?
Yes, I think very much aligned to how you hear about you have to own your own career. In this situation, you do have to own your own schedule. I personally am not a morning person. And so adjusting to this work from home situation, where the hardest part for me has been really to get that focused, dedicated heads down time to focus on projects and strategic planning. It was very clear after the first week of having both my kids who are 5 and 2.5 at home, and trying to be in sync with my husband on his work call schedule as well, and making sure, you know, someone is present and there to watch the kids, that wasn't going to work. And so I was able, and part of it is I've been with my company for 13 years, so I'm very well aware of our culture, and it's a very supportive culture built on trust. That it wasn't even that hard for me to share with my leadership team, with my colleagues, and let them know that this is how it's going to be for, you know, the next few months. I don't think it's not going to be sustainable for me to keep the same, you know, work hours and expectations. So early on, I looked at my schedule and noticed that a lot of my recurring meetings happen to be on the earlier side, because I work with a global team and a lot of folks on the East Coast as well. So I shifted and told my team I'm available from 6 a.m. to noon to take calls. Prior to that window, I get up early to have that dedicated time when the kids are still sleeping and the house is quiet, to crank out and work on the heads down focused work. And then once noon hits, I'm there with my kids for lunch. And then after that, it's my turn to watch the kids. And some of the activities that we've built during the afternoon is cooking sessions. So, you know, that's a great way to engage with the kids and also kind of stretch out the activity time with them too. And that's worked really well. And just, you know, continuing to be an advocate. And Angel, you mentioned your husband that was out, you know, for a day and wasn't able to help out. Similarly, last week, I think it's because of just the fact that I don't have a dedicated work from home space in my place. So it's not ergonomically like set up correctly. And over time, these last couple of weeks and being in bad posture, it really taken a toll on just like my neck and shoulder. And I had to just send out a note to let the team know that, you know, I can't stay in front of the computer for long periods of time, and you're not going to be hearing from me, you know, right away. It might take me a little while to get back to you, but just being able to vocalize that and share and let people know and continue to set that expectations, and also making sure your teams feel comfortable if you have direct reports on your team as well, that they understand it's okay if they need to step away, if they need to shuffle their schedule in order to accommodate and balance, you know, between work and personal, because right now it's really tough with the context switching. It's just so exhausting. I would say in the past, the context switching was at work, at least it was all still very limited to the professional side, but now it's between professional and personal on a very high frequency basis. And that just takes a lot when it's like a day-to-day process.
Yeah, definitely. And along those lines of context switching and setting up those boundaries, I'd love to hear from the team how you found it's been best to build allies versus building resentment with colleagues and leaders that may not have children, and helping them see from that perspective. Henry, would you like to share?
Yeah, so, you know, the note about having senior leaders be the ones to speak is truly, truly important. And, you know, at Airbnb, our CEO is not someone with a child, but one of our co-founders is. And so having those discussions, we're really relying on those everywhere throughout the company who do have that understanding to be able to represent and continue to share that. And what we noticed is that, you know, the mentions in our CEO Q&As were to really recognize what parents were going through and caregivers in general. And what you start to notice is that every time you say it, you do feel it. And I think at first it took a few weeks for that message to kind of develop. And especially as we start to hit 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks, that dynamic and that what people are going through and built up upon, we've been able to really expand on that and to not only just recognize, I think everybody's starting to feel the pressure of what it feels like to have so much be different. And it's not just helping caregivers now, but I think it's helping teams in general understand that flexibility is key, not just for caregivers, but in how we relate to each other to be really supportive teammates, and recognizing that life is starting to look very different for people across the board. And, you know, one of the biggest things that we're doing right now is just maintaining open conversations and making sure that our leadership continues to hear how people are doing.
That's fantastic. And I think on that note, there's a lot of positives that are coming from this situation, whether it's, you know, understanding things through empathy or like learning how flexibility can be impactful in a positive way for teams. One thing that comes to mind directly is that flexibility that you mentioned, Henry, and also remote work. From your lens, how could this be a beneficial change for organizations moving forward? Sarah, would you care to share?
Yeah, happy to. I think you really touched, and everybody's touched on these similar themes, but just because it is so in front of everyone's faces, right? Like we're not just impacting our comms to be very poignant and transparent about these challenges caregivers and parents are faced. We're seeing tons of headlines in the news around it too, right? And I think, yes, it's unfortunate. It took a pandemic for us to outline these in a massive broad way that us parents and caregiver advocates, disability advocates, right? Like we've been shouting these for decades. But I think that is the silver lining, is because there's now so much more thought leadership and awareness and being able to transition where we go from here is only, to me, going to get more productive and really, I think, trying to create more inclusive cultures again for caregivers, right? No matter what situation you have at home, knowing that you can still be trusted and depended on, right? And I think there's also going to be an opportunity for hopefully leaders to really see the skill sets that parents and caregivers bring to our teams, right? Like this is the time to double down and really try to express the resiliency that we bring, the delegation, mastery of time calendars, right? There's all these incredible things that even as HR and people leaders think about these skill sets that need to shift and adjust of where we're going, these will always bring our teams, to success as we focus on those skills.
I couldn't agree more. And inevitably, right, we'll come out of this. And so as we look to the future, how can companies support as we emerge from this current state? How can we support employees and parents alike as we start to move forward and start to return back to whatever that normal will look like?
I'll start again too. I think if you already have ERGs, employee resource groups of some kind, whether they're kind of the grassroots groups within your organization or startup, or whether they're official ERGs sponsored by your company, if you do not have one in place for parents and caregivers, that's a great place to start, right? I mean, when I joined our company 2 years ago, we did have an organic group that was specific to parents. And we've spent the past 2 years making the business case of already an incredible thought leadership and culture that we already had, but we needed again to add caregivers to their official inclusion strategy to be that much more thoughtful in our holistic equitable approaches to employee programming, benefits, hiring and retention programs too. So I think that's just a great start. Our PTA is here to help if you have any questions there too, just where to start, where to begin, because it just takes one of us to start that ball rolling.
Very, very good. And as employees do start to return to the office, I think the elephant in the room is how are we going to handle that many will still have kids at home because of lack of school or schools being shut down, daycares returning back to normalcy, looking to lock down nannies again. Henry, do you mind sharing some light on and some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, as a preface, I don't think I know the answer exactly for the companies, but I will say when I think about what it's going to look like, I think there is an opportunity right now where we've basically given permission for people to have open conversations, and we've also started preparing our managers to be able to listen to those conversations. And there is that, the support among the masses to be like, wow, it's actually okay for a direct report to tell their team, hey, so these are the priority projects that I think are most important for me, that I think I can make the most impact on. And here are the things that I don't think are going to be as important. And I'd like to be able to prioritize that across my life. That's not something that I think many people feel like they have the permission to do all the time. But I certainly have recognized that this time has allowed people to have that more and more. And I think it's really powerful for everyone to be able to do that. When we think about what makes for an excellent manager is somebody that can foster what people are excelling at, what they want to be spending their time on, and being able to realize, what are those true business priorities and what's really important that we can get major traction on, and setting aside the ones that are not as important. And I'm very proud of people all gathering around and having these very important, hard discussions, and hopefully netting out where people feel like they're proud of the time that they are spending and giving to their work, as well as the fact that they are giving everything and the best that they can day in, day out. I just want to make a nod to that. I have a special needs child. I have 2 boys, 5 and 6, and it is not pretty. The conversations are very challenging with my children and at work, and even with my own self. And so really just emphasizing, I'm not sure what it's going to look like, but I do think that I'm now having a lot more conversations of better thought partners across my company that are not just parents who want to make sure that we solve this together.
I love
to add on to that. I think that's truly the fact that nobody has all the answers, and it's really important for those who are in leadership positions at the executive company level to continue to keep a pulse on how their workforce is doing. Maybe sending out weekly surveys to check on everyone's well-being, mental health, what are things that are working, what's not working, what's needed, and continue to drive those conversations and dialogue, even as offices move back to opening and the gradual return to the office, because there's just so much that is still so unknown, and we're all in this together, that we need to continue to listen to each other and collect that feedback and figure out what is right for a particular individual, a particular group, and then the community and within the company as well.
Definitely. And I'm curious, with all the unknowns, as we know, we really have this opportunity to shape what that future is going to look like within our organizations. What do we foresee some of the new normals to be as we start to emerge from all of this? Matt, do you care to share?
Yeah, sure. The first thought that comes to mind is this has been a very real forcing function to ruthlessly prioritize what's important, kind of to what Henry was saying. Teams, managers, with yourself, have a very candid conversation and figure out what can be pushed out, what actually does need to happen in that very tight, for a lot of us parents, time window that you have to work before kids wake up, or during naps, or even after they go to bed at night. For me as a dad, I hope that the active, engaged environment that I have definitely trying to do on a daily basis, but have seen a lot of my friends that are also dads just stepping it up and really being active participants and helping the family out a lot more. I hope that that definitely persists. But I think at a company level, you know, every person is going through this experience, and it's going to make it that much more important that companies meet individuals where their needs are, whether that's building community, having flexible work options, you know, apprenticeship programs, all kinds of things that can allow them to dive into their personal interests, but also be happy and that much more engaged, thus you know, producing that much higher quality of work. I think if a company is going to be strict and not meet folks where they are, they're going to leave and they're going to flock to the places that are flexible.
Yeah, most definitely. I think the things that are happening now within organizations are going to set the precedent for years to come about the culture of that organization, what that's going to look like, and things like that don't get lost in the shuffle, right? We have a popular question from our audience that I'd love to share here. And Matt, if you'd like to start, and anyone is open to answering this, but we're getting the question of asking for advice for continuing to frame this conversation around caregivers and parents as the challenge holistically, rather than having it go to a mom's issue once we're all back at work. Would anyone like to share on that topic?
Yeah, I can hop in. And I wanted to touch on this earlier as well too. And gender equity is a huge piece of this. And there's, you know, there's something written or posted, I would say weekly before this all happened, on the level of, you know, work that mothers take on. But now I think we're starting to see with our own two eyes that it's both parents of both genders, and then also taking a look at different family dynamics as well too. You might have your children being raised by a grandparent, you might be a single parent, or in a same-sex relationship. So I think you know, that dialogue needs to keep going and to go in that inclusive kind of direction. And I think companies are now going to see that as well too, then also that there isn't a sacred space when it comes to meeting times. And you're going to be seeing not only, I think, children pop in more and more, but then also I've been hearing a lot of dogs. Like everyone has a dog, it seems like these days, or pets, or I mean, I'm like, oh gosh, like maybe I should get a dog. No, I don't want a dog. But I think when we start to see that diversity aspect, and this is what I focus on and think about all day, I think it's going to be more of a forefront for all companies moving forward. And the dialogue needs to keep going. And I think, you know, tapping into our resources within the Parents in Tech Alliance is a good start. You know, Sarah brought up a great point as well too, with empowering employee resource groups. You know, we're here to help, and we're here to provide all those kind of guidelines if you need us. Yeah.
I also wanted to add it. I think it's going to be a real interesting shift as we think about how just the definition of productivity has already changed, right? Like we've already been struggling for decades for families to work out the 9-to-5 model Monday through Friday in a culture of building innovation like Silicon Valley. That just hasn't worked. And what I do think is an opportunity are for more part-time roles, right? More different diversity of role types that could even work around the clock. As parents are up at 3 a.m. during feeding times, great, let's give them an opportunity, you know, to be part of something that they truly enjoy or have purpose behind. So I am excited about just seeing how the different types of roles and structures of teams can really break out from here.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Just the innovation that can come from this on how roles actually look and working hours overall. What are some additional things that companies should be doing or thinking about to work and think ahead of the times here? Allison, anything else you'd like to share on that?
Yeah, I think, you know, and going back to when I mentioned earlier, every family, you know, I think so much of it is dependent on age of the children and what your family dynamic is. Like someone that has 2 young kids, you know, or even 1 young kid those needs are just going to be completely different. You know, for those of you that are not based, you know, here in the Bay Area, we were just extended another month of our situation of staying home. And that means most likely the schools as well too are not going to be going back. So now we need to start thinking about what does the summer look like? If this is a new reality that even goes into the fall, if we, go back into our offices and then have to return home, I think we just have to remain open to things shifting quickly, because there's just too many unknowns, and mental health is the biggest piece that I would say that we're focusing on at Uber. We offer a fantastic service. I'm going to give them a little plug here, called Lyra, Lyra. Lyra, we offer unlimited counseling and emotional psych support for all of our employees. Anytime you need to speak to someone, you can speak to them remotely. So I think keeping everyone healthy up here is going to be something that needs to be a big focus kind of moving forward. Otherwise we're going to lose it. It's just not going to work out. So, but yeah, being aware of those age groups is also a big piece that I'm super sensitive to.
Great. And I'd love to double click onto that topic of mental health and self-care. And then we'll shift to a couple last questions here as we wrap up. But what are some of the steps that you're taking to take care of your own mental health and make time for self-care right now? Marilyn, care to share?
Yes. So, as the spring breaks were coming up and everyone was talking about how all their vacation plans were getting canceled, I think it's still very important to take that time away from work, even though you're, staying at home. I did this recently, actually, on a Friday. Just took that entire day off, and it just made such a difference. Just not thinking about work, having that extra day to do that, and looking towards the fact that, as Allison mentioned, it's looking like summer may not be a time where, we can move out of the situation, is also making sure that you're planning some time away from work during the next couple of weeks, figuring out what it looks like, what it means with families, with kids. I think that is still really important, and also encouraging your teams to do the same as well. Because, a big part of this is definitely the mental health piece. And I think this has definitely brought that into the forefront, the mindfulness, the wellness aspect of it. And companies are picking up on that and rolling out and putting together programs around that. I think is so important. And other ways, I think, ironically, it was really interesting. Like the week before, the week of the announcement of working from home, I had actually purposely taken 3 days off as like my own self-care, and went to get a massage, had some retail therapy, and I felt like all that has just gone, out the window over the last few weeks. And it's just making it a point to, even if it's just taking a day here, a day there, just making sure that you, again, advocate for yourself and advocate for time to do that. And one thing that I picked up on during those 3 days that I took off earlier, before the COVID work from home, I actually discovered a podcast called Meditative Story that I really enjoy, and highly recommend. It's really nice. They're short, 15-20-minute podcasts that you can, listen to right before bed, or if you're able to sneak away for a half hour away from family in another room. It's really nice to just get that time to yourself, and it's a really good a way to just decompress.
Definitely. It's interesting because I'm constantly reminding myself that it's hard to pour from an empty cup, if you've ever heard the mantra of that before. And so that ability to be able to fill your cup, even if it's just for 15 minutes. I sat in my car the other day just to listen to a podcast myself with some quiet. And I think that, as silly as that may sound, we need to have some sort of sanity checks like that. I know within my organization, they've been putting sanity check 15-minute breaks on our calendars, just to say, like, get up, don't think about work, go for a walk, do something, as well as utilizing PTO to make sure that you do keep your sanity through this and continue to push through. So important. We have a couple.
I also want to add, sorry to cut you off. We just also got a great tip from our management this week too, of really thinking about the Zoom burnout aspect, right? I think our uptick in video calls has certainly grown dramatically. And they actually just rolled out some great best practices of with wellness and mental wellness in mind to say not every call has to be video. If you are going to send out a call, you can put, video optional or audio only, just to give people that mindset again, especially if they're scheduled in the mornings when we're still trying to gather, our family household for the day too. So I thought that was a great tip.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think I was actually reading a Parents in Tech Alliance article that said if a video call can be, it might have been Matt that you shared or someone shared, if a video call can be made a phone call and to walk around the block with your kids while that's happening. And it just instantly a light bulb went off. I'm like, what a great concept that a lot of people probably aren't thinking about. But that Zoom fatigue is real. So I appreciate you sharing that, Sarah. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to mental health?
I'll add one is that if you are living in an apartment space or for whatever reasons you can't really get away, and I also know that, quiet time is really hard to find and recognize that. I've been trying to meditate, but I'm also not a morning person, which is hard. And so one of the other antidotes for me has been finding something that makes you smile. Joy is an amazing multiplicative, cup filler. And for me, it's just been like getting goofy and dancing, which my kids sometimes join me in, but they also just know that like, if I can dance and smile, and sometimes I do it with a friend, but whatever it is, find something that gives you joy. If it's going and, taking a machine apart in the middle of the day when you have your energy, that half an hour, 1 hour that you spend giving yourself joy will, deliver so much more in spades later.
I love that. And we do have, just to kind of wrap up this segment here, we've got a crowdsourced question here. If there's any additional tips on finding me time and what that looks like in a day. For some people, it feels like if they're not working, they're parenting. If they're not parenting, they're working, especially with kids, multiple kids or kids under the age of 5. Any last tips or advice on how to find me time throughout the day?
One thing that's been helping me is just trying to sneak in my own podcast time wherever possible, because I've lost my commute time. That was also my considered me time, to charge and get energized or inspired by different podcast stories, or just laugh, comedy podcasts out there that I listen to as well. So whether it's just sticking the earbuds in while I'm doing the dishes or cleaning and doing laundry too, when I'm not having to do direct care, that's been a nice little win in of itself.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. And the multitasking tip on that is awesome too. I think that's important to recognize. Something that's been working for me, I'd love to share is I've been using an app called Headspace, and at the beginning of the meditation, they have you go through a body scan. And so even without using the app, when I wake up in the morning, I'll mentally kind of scan my body and say, how am I feeling getting out of bed? What do I want to serve myself with today to help me better serve others? And that's been really helpful for me. And it only takes a couple of minutes. So I thought I would share. We've got two last questions here, and then we'll be wrapping up for the day. So I'd love to dig in on strategy and what kind of strategy can be implemented from the top down within an organization right now to champion and retain parents through all the adversity that's happening. Henry, would you mind sharing?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Gosh. So let me just recap all the great things that so many people have shared. Coming from your leadership is absolutely key. Making sure that you have continuous frameworks to check in and actually hear how people are doing. Know that is not always a one-on-one conversation, but make sure to have a set of tools of how you can engage and hear how people are doing. One-on-ones for some are great. Leveraging your ERGs is another tactic. And I love, Marilyn, your idea of just a simple pulse. It really just got me. I was just thinking, how can we maybe do a pulse? And maybe we can do a pulse across every company, and all of us are doing a mental health check-in with people regularly. And then really just assessing the needs of different people and the different audience segments that they might be doing, and leveraging your diversity and inclusion teams to be able to give that lens as you start to think of solutions. You know, I've been preaching for a long time. The ERGs are amazing, but especially for what those around caregivers and parents, working really closely with the HR teams has been indispensable. And I noticed that you can only get so far without their support. So making sure that you're having these conversations with your internal teams as well.
Great. Marilyn, can you share a couple thoughts as well?
Yeah, I think there's definitely the lens of, as a company and people in leadership, to be more cognizant of all of the topics around what it means to be working parents, the different dynamics of working families, but also as individuals to advocate for yourself as well, getting together with other working parents who are in similar situations, and coming together. If you don't currently have an ERG group at your company, then start one. You know, be that voice to help advocate for others within your organization. I think that's really important as well, and not just wait for you know, people from the top to cascade these wonderful programs and policies down, but being the one to help drive those changes within your organization if those things aren't already established. It is unfortunate that it has taken, you know, something like this to open the eyes up for a lot of people who may have not looked at the struggles and the concerns of the working parent situation in the past. But the silver lining to all of this, I think, for those who are in leadership roles who don't have children, or they've already moved past, you know, the survival mode that we're all currently in, that it is a good reminder to help them see what it means in this current modern day of being working parents, and how they can really look at innovative ways to continue to support working parents in not just in this situation, but going forward. Companies that don't have strong parental leave, I hope that this has opened up their eyes in how important it is. That 6 weeks is definitely not adequate for new parents to then rush back and jump back into the workforce. And looking at other benefits like backup care, how important that is to have programs like that to help support parents when situations come up and maybe their usual childcare has not available, and continuing to just build that enablement and awareness across the company, especially with people managers, but to continue that going forward, not just, you know, with COVID, but building that into the new hire orientation program, having that be a topic that is continued to be top of mind for everyone, to be empathetic to different working situations. And, you know, we talk about taking a pulse check with people, continuing to provide that forum to collect that feedback and share more broadly. And I think, you know, prior to all of this, there was always this hesitation of allowing people to work from home. Like, some companies don't have that flexibility, but I think this has shown that it can be done, and people will figure out ways to be productive as long as there's the trust involved in the working relationship between the company and individuals. And there is always a way to make it work. So I think this is just things that we all have to continue to keep in mind and advocate for ourselves and for the individuals in the company.
Absolutely.
One last thought on that, just because what I have found in my own experience too, a great kind of motivator effort for leadership is doing an audit of your competition. What are they providing in terms of caregiving benefits? What does their paid leave policy look like? Are they promoting that on their career page too, right? There's ways of trying to collect just from tech or industry trends and habits too, and really use that as part of your pitch or your opportunity to discover what is possible. And certainly know the challenges of depending where your company is in its life cycle too. But there's always baby steps, no pun intended, to take and get that progress going.
Definitely. And I'd love to wrap up here today with just a quick rapid fire round. We were talking about some silver linings earlier. What silver linings in all of this does everyone hope continues to persist when things do return to a more normalized state? Matt, you want to start?
Sure. you know, this whole global response has really shown that everyone's vulnerable to this thing. And I think used in a good way, if everybody could be more vulnerable, you know, you're letting your whole company into your living room or kitchen or wherever you may be at home. I think there's so much goodness that can come from being vulnerable with yourself, with your peers, with your partners, with your bosses, managers, whatever. So I hope that persists.
Great. Allison, how about you?
Yeah, and I think Matt brought up a great point in an article that was recently published by the PTA around empathy. And I hope that in understanding how lucky we are in the situation that some of us are in, I would say another silver lining would be that I hope to take with me is that I've been finding lots of things that it feels like me time and it feels like time away, but it's actually something that my daughter and I both enjoy. So she loves Project Runway. Like, so we're binging Project Runway Junior because the other one's a little too racy. Okay. And I hope that I keep this kind of, I don't know, run towards creative ideas that we both enjoy as a parent, because I think there was always before like kids stuff and then me time. And now I'm trying to like find as many things that overlap. I hope that continues.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
Anyone else care to share a silver lining they'd like to take with them? I know we've gone through a bunch.
I'll say mine is I think that the shift of there's a lot of inherent bias that parents just aren't committed enough, right? We already know that bias exists. Today, 40% of Americans still think moms should simply stay home. That is going to show up in a lot of different areas, but I think that's the shift now that's happening. We already know the leaders we are, the superhero capabilities we do every day. Now, a lot of leaders and companies are seeing that too.
Great.
I'll add on to the fact that parental leave is not vacation. I had a coworker say that to me when our company policy got extended to 6 months of parental leave, and they were saying, you know, it didn't feel fair for non-parents that they didn't get as much, you know, time away. And I was thinking to myself, this is not vacation. And now they can all see that it truly is not. I would love for those Zoom family gatherings, you know, having dinner together online, and just being the fact that my family's a transplant here in San Francisco, and not being able to see family frequently. I hope we get to continue to do that. And with Allison's point about creativity, I just love seeing what my kids come up with what we have inside the house, and being inside, and just been really enjoying that aspect of it.
Awesome. And Henry, I think I saw you raise your hand as well.
Sure. Yeah, I think that one of the really amazing things right now is that with this being a global and universal experience, I think it engages people to be problem solvers together. So companies that may have been in competition, people really look at coming together and finding these solutions. And just highlighting, obviously, I work at a company that really believes about belonging, and there's this inward focus around our local community and doing the things that we all need to support each other in these smaller communities. And I'm really, truly enjoying getting to know my neighbors actually more so right now. And I hope that, you know, everyone around the world is really understanding just being able to connect with each other in awkwardly by 6 feet or however, but that's something I am looking forward to. And I think that extends to even work teams. So really just understanding, like, if you knew more about your team's social personal life, how might that impact how you treat them on a day-to-day basis, and what can we do to support each other?
Absolutely. And we're just about here at time. So I want to thank you all for being on the call and sharing your insights and your thought leadership. I think just the last thing I'd love to say is, from a silver lining perspective, the ability that we've shown to be able to communicate and collaborate together transparently and bring our whole authentic selves to work. I really hope that that doesn't go away, because I've seen so many teams come together through this. And even though it's through unprecedented circumstances. It's just so wonderful to see. So including everyone on this call coming together from different teams, it's meant a lot. So thank you everyone for the time. I hope this was valuable to everyone. Please feel free to reach out with any additional questions that you have to the Mom Project or Parents in Tech Alliance directly as we continue to navigate through this together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.